guys, welcome back to the Road to Success MCAT test prep series. This is my third video about psychology, and I'm going to be discussing cognition today. Cognition is going to be kicked off by me talking about language theories. I will then discuss the importance of the limbic system and its anatomy and physiology. I will then follow up with emotional theories, which is the most important thing you'll need to know for the exam. For some reason, the AAMC will always test you about this, whether it's a practice exam or the real thing. So please pay attention to the various different emotional theories. I will finish up this lecture by talking about stress and how we can prevent it. We have a lot of important stuff to talk about today, so let's jump right into it.
Starting off with cognitive development, let's look at Piaget stages. Piaget believes we all go through 4 stages of development, starting with the sensory motor stage. This stage lasts until you're 2 years old, and it's characterized by extensive use of your senses. Once you master object permanence, you'll enter the next stage. An example of learning object permanence is peekaboo. From ages 2 to 7, you're in the pre-operational stage, where pretend play is very common. Egocentrism is a defining trait, and it is very hard for children to share or think of others. From 7 through 11, children will go through the concrete operational stage, where they learn empathy and conservation. The water task on the right is a common way of assessing whether they passed the stage or not. Finally, after age 12, we enter the formal operational stage. This is where we engage in abstract thought and moral thinking. Moving on to problem solving, let's discuss the various methods. Trial and error is self-explanatory, while algorithms are essentially long logical procedures that solve problems in a sequential order. This is how computers solve problems. Despite the high accuracy, algorithms take a very long time for humans to complete, so the more efficient method is a heuristic. Means-end analysis is when we analyze the main problem and break it down into smaller, more digestible parts. Our intuition tends to be very wrong very often, but fixation occurs when we narrow down to one thought process and we don't look at other opportunities. Type 1 errors are false positives, and type 2 errors are false negatives. So I'll just make a quick note right here. False positive, false negative. Depending on the situation, one could be much worse than the other, or vice versa. The availability heuristic is using examples that come to mind to make a decision on something, while the representativeness heuristic matches the problem to a previously learned prototype. I know they sound very familiar, but keep in mind that the availability method calls on memories, while the representativeness method is based on previous knowledge and learning. Lastly, biases can confound our decision-making. Overconfidence causes us to be unprepared, while belief perseverance prevents us from acknowledging disconfirming facts. Similarly, confirmation bias is when we look only for facts that support our own stance. Framing effects are how we present the situation to others and can be used to make a problem seem easier or more difficult than it actually is. Now we can move on to language. The main language theories are listed here and can be read by pausing this video, but I want to take time and focus specifically on Chomsky, Skinner, and Vygotsky. Noam Chomsky believed in nativism and stated that in every infant there is a language acquisition device, or universal grammar as it's known now, and that allows them to grasp language and syntax. He believes that we are born with the ability to comprehend language. Skinner, on the other hand, believes that we learn language through operant conditioning from our parents. He also believes that it's a behavioral trait that is determined by the language one speaks. Vygotsky believes in a middle ground where we are innately able to understand language, but the majority of our language acquisition occurs during a critical period of learning where we are influenced by adults around us. The model on the right here is explaining Vygotsky's theory. Let's move on to the brain. In the brain, there are 2 areas associated with speech and language. Broca's area is for speech production, and aphasia here will cause one to be unable to produce proper words. Wernicke's area is for speech comprehension, and aphasia here will make one unable to understand words. Global aphasia is when both areas are damaged. They are connected by the arcuate fasciculus. Lastly, the corpus callosum is a middle structure of the brain connecting the hemispheres together. The left side of the brain is for language, and the right side is for action and perception. Now let's talk about the limbic system. The limbic system is the emotional headquarters of your brain and is made up of 4 parts. The thalamus is the relay station for pretty much everything in your body, including your senses. Your senses dictate your emotions, so this is an important part of the limbic system. The amygdala controls aggression and intense feelings. Damage to it can cause you to mellow out, or in the case of Kluver-Bucy syndrome, completely disinhibit you. This disease is also categorized by hypersexuality and oral fixations. The hippocampus is for the memory storage. So happy or upsetting moments are stored and recalled because of this structure. The hypothalamus is what regulates the autonomic nervous system's fight or flight response. The mnemonic that is best used to learn these concepts is hippo, for hippocampus, wearing a hat, for the rest. The hemispheres in the prefrontal cortex play an important role in regulating emotion. Positive emotions go to the left side, while negative emotions go to the right side. Know that the prefrontal cortex has the most control over your body during social situations. This is good as it can override any innate aggression or negative emotions you might feel and replace them with a socially acceptable response. As for the autonomic nervous system, it's split into the systematic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is a fight or flight response, and it dilates your pupils, relaxes your airways, increases your heartbeat, and so on. That's all right here on this graphic, by the way. I also want to point out that it inhibits digestion. This is essentially the opposite of what the parasympathetic nervous system does, where it activates all of these during times of calm, and it stimulates digestion while minimizing heart rate and lung capacity. One more thing I want to point out is that the purpose of the sympathetic nervous system specifically is to mobilize your body in order to handle any sort of stressor. Okay, so this might be the most important slide in the entire psychology series. I don't know why, but for every exam, whether practice or real, there's always a question about these theories of emotion. I guess AAMC really likes these topics. I don't know. But anyways, sorry about that. Let's please pay attention to these because they will be showing up on test day. These theories basically explain how our brains process emotion. Is it stimulus first, then emotion? Or is it vice versa? Is it both? Well, according to James Lang's theory, it is the perception of a physical stimulus followed by the feeling of emotion. This, however, has been disproven several times, and the other theories have much more weight. So, I'll just mark this down as disproven. But moving on, the Cannon-Barth theory states that the physical stimulus and the emotional response are experienced at the same time, while the Schachter-Singer's theory introduces the concept of cognitive appraisal into the mix. The brain experiences the physical stimulus and cognitively interprets it at the same time. Then it gives it an emotion. The Lazarus theory suggests the opposite, though, and states that the cognitive appraisal is before emotional and physical interpretations, which will be simultaneous in this one. Now, our final topic is going to be stress. Stress is what we experience when our brain or when our equilibrium is disturbed. There are 2 steps that we take to acknowledge stress. The first is primary appraisal, where we evaluate the stressor and acknowledge that if it is negative or positive to us. If it's negative, we will be moving on to secondary appraisal, where our plan is to take action against it. There are 4 major stressors that we all experience. Significant life changes, like moving or changing jobs, catastrophes, like hurricanes or natural events, daily hassles, like going to work on time, and finally ambient stressors, which would be like noise, These are the ones that you need to recognize on test day. The nervous system's response to stress is very interesting. The autonomic nervous system works with the limbic system and reticular system to process your incoming emotions, and the sympathetic nervous system works on a physical response. So vasoconstriction, lower digestion, release of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and especially cortisol. I want to point out cortisol, because this right here is the stress hormone. But yeah, anyways, so sometimes I want to point out sometimes it is better to create a support system instead of going to fight or flight. And an interesting response because of this is that of the tendon befriend response. This is where oxytocin is released, and it induces feelings of friendship and camaraderie. There are three main stress stages. There's the initial stage, alarm, which this is where the stress kicks in and your heart starts racing. Resistance is when you fight against the stressor. Cortisol is going to be spiking during this time. And if you can't resolve that stress, unfortunately, exhaustion will follow. This is where tissue damage is going to occur and illness will start to set in. Unfortunately, there are many effects of stress that harm us, ranging from hypertension to depression to even impotence and infertility. Stress affects our bodies in the worst ways. If you want to learn all this, please pause the video and take notes on this. This is pretty much all of it. It's pretty straightforward. I don't want to end this video on a negative note though, so let's look at ways that we can manage our stress. Optimism is key, and having a strong social network helps as well. Exercise and meditation have been proven several times to help with reducing stress. And cognitive flexibility, or changing your perspective, can help you find solutions. One thing I find really interesting is that faith can help one lower their stress levels. That being said, we have reached the end of this video. I hope this wasn't too dense of a video, but we did cover very important topics. One of the most, like I said, this is probably the single most important slide in the entire series. And learning about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems is also very important. With that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Happy studying. I hope to see you guys all next time with a video about behavior.